on this episode of the Soul Twin Stars podcast.
Just the word wish is like this mantra, this release, this okay.
And we learn more from our failures than our successes. Like you started out talking about so many challenges.
One of the 5 reasons why bad things happen is subconscious sabotage.
When you're sure about what you're manifesting and you're talking about it, you're thinking about it, you're writing about it, and then how do we be patient about it?
Hi, I'm Lady Shadowe, a witch with much to share, stirring the cauldron with magical self-care.
Hi, I'm Peaceful Nick, a medium divine. I chat with the dead and interpret every sign.
We are Soul Twin Stars, best friends through it all.
From spells to healing, we're answering the call.
From moon cycles to menopause and making peace with the dead.
We aren't afraid to talk about what's rarely said.
So tune in each week to get raw, real, and wise.
Let's talk about a spiritual life with absolutely no disguise. Welcome to the Soul Twin Stars podcast, Uninhibited Spirituality.
We'd like to first thank this week's episode sponsors, Beans and Buttercream Bakery. They ship the most delicious baked goods anywhere. Follow them on their Facebook page, Beans and Buttercream Bakery. Also, Abernathy Photography, serving Western Kentucky and beyond, specializing in digital photography, weddings, and so much more. They now also feature drone photography. You can book them at abernathyphotography.com. And lastly, if you find yourself in Westchester County, New York, just north of New York City, Fino Restaurant in Croton-on-Hudson, New York, serves the most delicious, authentic Italian food. That's Fino Restaurant, Fino. And now, back to our episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Soul Twin Stars podcast. I'm Peaceful Nick the Medium, joined by the amazing Lady Shadowe. And today we'd like to welcome Brownell Landrum. Hello, Brownell. Hello, Lady Shadowe. How are you both today?
I'm very happy to be here and get to know you all. I'm very thrilled. So I'm doing well.
We're so happy to have you. Lady Shadowe, how are you?
Excellent, my friend. I have been working hard as always on 2 projects, juggling, but then I took a couple days to myself to sneak off and to have some fun.
Good.
The Divine Moment section coming, but I wanted to welcome Brownell. Thank you again for being here. We're so excited to have another guest. We actually have a lot of guests lined up for the spring, don't we, Nick? So we're excited to bring new people on, new perspectives, and to join our wild and crazy conversations.
Well, I'm happy to be here so much. And I want to hear about your play too. I know that's offshoot, but I heard you talking about that the other day. So I know.
Yes.
So Brownell Landrum is the author of the new book, The Art and Science of Wishing, and the founder of the Cosmic Wish Experiment, which we are going to talk about. That's a global grassroots effort to elevate our collective conscious energy by using a simple, fun, and free process to change the world based on solid science, which you all know we talk about that here all the time. Brownell's research reveals that wishing isn't just birthday candles and shooting stars. It's a universal practice woven throughout every culture and faith tradition, making it one of humanity's most powerful expressions of hope, intention, and survival. And again, welcome to you, Brownell. Now we're going to talk about all of those things, but we're going to start with divine moments. So would you like to share a divine moment that you've recently had?
Or
somewhat recently. It doesn't have
yeah. Well, I'll just tell you, just kind of in context, because this sets the stage for kind of some of the other stuff. But this was 2 years ago, so it wasn't that recent. But I decided I was going to write this story, and I thought, well, I'm going to write it from the point of view of what I call the upstairs. And so like they're looking down going, okay, what is this person? And it's a semi-autobiographical. Her name's Nell, right? So it's pretty obvious. And so I'm writing this, and all of a sudden as I'm writing, I'm like, wait a minute, they're telling me who they are. And that started it started a book that I published about 6 months ago called Love Story to the Universe. And that set me on a path. So that was pretty powerful in terms of like all of a sudden, and there was so much connection, but it's not always there every day. So I would like to have more of that. I think I had a hint of them visiting me yesterday, but
I can teach you all about that. I can get you connected to your guides, and I can get you channeling. Don't you worry. And Lady Shadowe channels when she writes as well.
Beautiful. So that was mine.
That's amazing. Lady Shadowe, do you have any divine moments this week?
I got to see Boy George perform with Culture Club. 50 feet from me. It was so amazing. Longtime fan, and music, connecting with idols. And my husband and I had the most romantic, fun weekend with all of that. And I love how music elevates us and arts and creativity. And Boy George actually took time between all the songs to give us a little story about how he came up with the song. Kind of how you were just saying, Brownell, with like being inspired to write things and where that inspiration comes from. And I just love that. And so it was a wonderful opportunity to get in front of, again, one of my favorite 80s icons, and just being able to hear the music and see the sweat on his face. We were so close. It was wonderful.
That's really great.
We had a great weekend, and we went roller skating. Nick knows that I'm a roller and an ice skater, so whenever I can find a rink, I try to get on it and relive my childhood. And so it was just a really, really great weekend. But now it's back to work. I got a show going up tomorrow, which is technically what after this airs, and then I've got another theater festival in 6 weeks where we're also doing a one act, so that I'm writing. It will be my 18th, I think, show. My 18th.
Wow.
So with all that going on, it's very divine. So thank you for asking, Nick. And what about you, darling?
I had silly me. I overscheduled myself the last couple of weeks because, I think I can do everything. And I'm learning quickly that was a really poor decision on my part. So I've not been feeling well the last couple of days because of that. But however, and the divine moment, I've had many divine moments. I've given a lot of mediumship readings over the last couple of weeks. I can't even count all of them. I had a reading with a couple, and I'm not going to reveal any details about who this is or anything for anonymity. And their child passed away like a year or two ago. And I said, your child is telling me that they're flickering the lights or something's happening with the light in their bedroom. And they're like, no, that doesn't happen. No, that doesn't happen. I said, okay, well, pay attention for the next couple of days, just in case. Lo and behold, 2 hours later, I get an email. They said, you're not going to believe it. We had our child's lamp in our bedroom. We're folding laundry, and it started flickering off and on, off and on, off and on. And it had never done that before. And they're like, that is confirmation that you were really connecting with our child's spirit. And I was just like, so that's why I do mediumship readings, because it proves that your loved ones in spirit go on beyond this earthly realm. And it's so healing, especially for parents.
Yeah.
Because the worry, are they okay? Are they safe? Are they in pain? All of those questions. And it's like, no, all of your loved ones in spirit are safe and at peace. And it was just such a beautiful, validating moment. And I love getting validation from my clients. It's just makes it all worth all the emails and the hard work. And, you guys are entrepreneurs.
And writers, and we want to we like to know that people like what we do. That keeps us motivated to keep doing it, for sure.
Exactly. We want to know all about you, Brownell. You were in the corporate world years ago.
I was.
And you're still
like Nicole.
Yeah. Yeah, I did have a cubicle at one point in the 90s. So, Brownell, you were in the corporate world, and you are now an author and an entrepreneur. Tell us your journey from being in the corporate world into your metaphysical life and entrepreneurship and authorship.
Okay, well, there's a lot, but I'll just try to give you the headlines, and then you can ask about whatever you want to know more. But I left the corporate world, and then I started a business, and that business failed spectacularly. In fact, I've had so many failures. I've actually been a keynote speaker at 2 different failure conferences. So that doesn't, like, I'm a success at failure, I guess. No, that was a while ago, but still, so I started getting into kind of spiritual stuff while I was in the corporate world. And then I had a big kind of horrible several years. And then I went back into the corporate world, and then I left that in the early 2000s, 2004, 2005. And then I started a business, put all my money into it, put everything into it. And then everything fell apart. And I was going through one of those kind of times when that, like, it just seems like everything, like a relationship ended, my dog died, the business fell apart. I had to go through bankruptcy. I was going to lose my home. Like, everything was crashing at once. And I just kept thinking, there has to be a reason. There has to be a reason. And so I started kind of digging into, what could that be? And then I'm kind of in a meditative state. And all of a sudden, these 5 reasons came to me. So that led me to write my first book called 5 Reasons Why Bad Things Happen: How to Turn Tragedies into Triumph. So it was like, I was just obsessive to try to not only know what those 5 reasons were, but do the research, do the backup, how can I build this story? And so that was my first book. I thought, okay, left brain, nonfiction, I can crank that out. I can do that. And then a few years after that, I thought, you know what, I'm going to try fiction. And so I wrote a novel that was just kind of, a nice little love story. And then I realized, well, if I'm going to write part 2 of that, or, the second book of that, I'm going to go back into their previous lifetime. So I'm going to start building this series based on, so it's actually a tetralogy, I think is what they call it when they're 4 books. And they're called the duet stories. And so that was the first time, like, just writing a love story and looking at, like, who they are now and who they were before and who they were before that. And how does that explain the things where they are now? And I just found it so much fun, because you get really excited about writing characters in a love story, but then they meet, they're together. Okay, what else are you going to write? Right. It's kind of like, that's usually the end of the story, but you can go back to another lifetime and you start weaving it, and you can say this sort of the same people, but in a different situation. So I wrote that, and then I kind of got into some other things. I started getting into some screenwriting. So I haven't done any playwriting, and I haven't had any movies made, but I wrote a bunch of screenplays, lots of different things. And then I got into my last trilogy that came out a year and a half ago. That's called We Meet Again. And it is an epic reincarnation mystery love story about a famous couple reincarnated today to fulfill a prophecy that'll change the world. So this is like Da Vinci Code meets Outlander with a reincarnation metaphysical message. And so that was, that's what I was working on. And then 2 years ago, I started writing a semi-autobiographical book that I was telling y'all before we started, called A Love Story to the Universe. And then that led me to writing my latest book, which is nonfiction. So I've kind of done but it feels like everything I've done my whole life kind of led to writing these new books. So, so I did some nonfiction last year too, because I did a book called The Hero's Playbook. That's more like a workbook where you can follow yourself through the hero's journey and, look, and there's activities and things like that. So I've done a lot.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I would love to dive more into how everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Even though we tell ourselves this all the time, and we tell our audience this all the time, when you're in it, it's so hard to believe it and to apply, that faith that things are going to be okay, that things are going to heal themselves, that even though we as humans have proven when we're into adulthood that we've already solved problems all of our lives, and don't give ourselves enough credit for the fact that we've solved it. We've moved through grief. We've moved through things in life that were difficult over and over. But when the big stuff hits or the confusing stuff hits, it's like, oh, I'm really lost on this one. How do I turn this one over? This is bigger than the last thing, right? So, oh my gosh, give us some great examples of how we can really tackle the big stuff, like you were talking about, losing your house and going bankrupt and having to start over, and or a health issue that's super challenging. Give us your tools on how to turn that over and trust that it's just going to be a better day tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's it is very structured, and there's a concept that actually I came up with after I wrote that kind of ties into what you're saying, and that I've actually talked about in my latest book, that I need to kind of go back and weave back into that book that I wrote 20 years ago, and that is something I called reverse optimism. And that's when you can look back at some of the things that happen and go, oh, if that hadn't happened, then that wouldn't happen, and that happened. And that's kind of like you're saying, like, give yourself some credit for the things that you did overcome and understand that. And also it gives you this kind of confidence, like, okay, I went through that. I'm here now. I learned a lot, and really it is about learning, right? I mean, I think that's the key. These things happen for us to learn something. And the big of the five, the thing that all the five reasons have in common are something needs to change, right? You're getting a nudge that something needs to change. And sometimes I think the guides are like, I describe them like border collies, because they're going to keep whacking you in the side to get you to go down a path.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be painful because you're avoiding that thing. I've done a little bit of healing stuff before, and I remember working with somebody, and he was going through a really difficult time healing wise. And then I asked him, I said, well, why did this happen? And people don't even ask themselves usually why it happened, right? His higher self came in, boom, answered the question. And he was actually supposed to have, had serious throat cancer. He was foaming at the mouth. He'd had 2 surgeries. He was scheduled in 2 days or 3 days to have a 3rd surgery. And he came in, his higher self answered that question, like, boom, here's why. And he's kind of like, what was that about? He wasn't consciously there, like his super conscious came in. And then he ended up not needing the surgery. 3 days later, he was completely healed. Like, it can happen like that, right? But we got to realize, what is it that needs to change? So that's a big part of it. Is there's usually a lesson. Sometimes there's a blessing in disguise. It's not all, I don't necessarily say it's always a blessing in disguise unless you learn the lesson and are embodying the lesson, right? Because you can keep taking that test over and over again if you're not going to learn the lesson, is one way to look at it. So I don't know what else you want to know, but that's kind of a big part of it, is knowing that. And I'll tell you another little story is, you probably remember the book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People.
Yes.
Well, Rabbi Kushner, Harold Kushner, wrote that book, and he actually read my book. And his reaction was that he didn't think things happen for a reason, because he believes in a random universe.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And that really was like, what? Like, that was such a shock, especially for a spiritual, religious man. And then I did some more research and found out that the people who believe things happen for a reason are happier than those who don't.
Yes.
We can't use it as like spiritual warfare, going, this happened to you, and blaming anybody, because that is when it gets dangerous. But when we start going, well, if it happened for a reason, what am I supposed to learn? What am I supposed to change? I think there are beautiful gifts, and even the problems.
It's so funny that you said, what are we supposed to learn? Because one of my questions, as you were talking, I'm jotting questions, and one of them was, what did you learn? But you already addressed that.
What did you learn? Yeah. I mean, what you guys think? I mean, it's not.
I want to tell you a couple of things. One is, you were talking about things happen for a reason. I know Lady Shadowe and I both believe that 1,000,000%. And I also want to talk about belief systems and how people can heal, because that's so important as well. I'll just tell a story I've told many times on the podcast and on my other social media. Quickly, when I was 15, my mom suddenly died at my feet, suddenly, unexpectedly. And there's a very long story to it, lots of pieces and parts. But that moment, I knew her death was for a very specific reason. Immediately.
That kind of death too, that way, right? I mean,
Right.
all of the factors that went in. Yeah.
Right. And so I moved from a small town in Missouri to San Francisco, where my dad was with his other family. And it changed my life for the better, not because of my dad and his family necessarily, but because I had more opportunities in a bigger city. And it was the 80s, so it was very different then than now. So you could do other things than you could do now as a young woman. But anyway, that's another story. But I knew that from that moment. And I think if more people were tuned in to the purpose of why things happen when they happen, they would have a better understanding of life. Now, that's a horrible thing to happen to a young teenage girl. Most people think that's the worst thing ever. How did you handle that? But I knew it. I knew from the moment it happened that it happened for a reason. And I wasn't necessarily spiritual. I was raised Catholic, and, things were weird. And, it's just a lot of moving parts, but I just knew it. I just knew it.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Knowing that, because I think that's what I'm kind of hoping that people get, right, from watching your show and to this kind of messaging and this kind of discussion is, when you know that, doesn't that give you more strength?
Yes. Because
it's so much of the grief is not knowing the why, right? Or not believing there's a why. And so you're like, why did this happen? Why did this happen? And at least you can go, okay, if this happened for a reason, now I'm going to look for the opportunities that are going to take me there, and kind of start to trust that, that it happened that way. Anyway, that's just, I'm putting words in your mouth.
That is a point I have never considered. And it's a very good point. I didn't have to ever ask why, because I knew, and people have asked me why I didn't grieve so deeply. And I never understood till you just said that. Ever. I never, I mean, it was sad, but I didn't grieve the way I've seen other people grieve until you just said that, because I already knew the why. I'm having a huge light bulb moment right now. So
that's beautiful.
Talk amongst yourselves, because I need to process. Need to process for a few minutes.
Saturday Night Live, they used to
overclamped.
It's kind of like when we're going through life, even when things are good, we question, right? Mm-hmm. Why are things good? What's my next step? How long is it going to stay good? Are things going to be sabotaged because things are good? And there's this constant balance of emotions that kind of have to go with almost every day in our lives, right? We have to balance gratitude, managing our emotions, being, functional and trying to default to a healthy way of thinking and expressing ourselves and staying open to ourselves, authentic to ourselves, open with others and those relationships in our life. And those relationships make energy complicated, because we were talking earlier about frequency right before we came in, about balancing our frequency to the level of which we feel inside versus matching other frequencies. And sometimes it's more of an effort to match another person's energy, because sometimes we have to lower our expectations. We talk about that a lot, don't we, Nick? About having to bring ourselves lower to get higher. And so this whole conversation just reminds me of that we all have to make so many decisions every day just to get through a day. And we have to decide where we're going to be emotionally, spiritually. And we also have to be prepared for shit to happen tomorrow or at the end of the day that we're not expecting, and be able to process that too. Like the element of surprise per se, even though things are good and steady now. So it's such a balance, but that ties into what you were talking about and what your books are about, is like manifestation and kind of claiming what's yours scientifically, spiritually. Can you talk about that? Like, how can we go into a life both with the small decisions and the big decisions and say, no matter what happens, I'm going to be good? Because like you say, I trust that my authentic self is doing all of this matching and deciding and living and experiencing for a reason,
Right. Exactly. And that's where, my new book is The Art and Science of Wishing, as you mentioned. I'm actually working on one, The Art and Science of Wishing, at work too. So, and I wrote a children's book called Cosmic Wishes for kids. And when and I'll just give you a little history because I think that helps you give context. But I was writing this semi-autobiographical book that was started when I started, I don't know if I called channeling, but I guess it was. And then I started writing it's written in 4 kind of sections. And one of the sections I started creating this world upstairs. That's where wishes are sorted and granted. And it's kind of this magical realism type of place. And so it made me start thinking about wishes and wishing. And then one night my geek in me, I guess, but I listen to science lectures sometimes to help me sleep. And I was listening to a science lecture on neuroplasticity. And that's what wait a minute, is there science in wishing? That's where my brain went. But then I say my brain, but I'm like, y'all would probably say it was already determined. I just had to get there, right? But it does feel like everything, all of those things, what I wrote from that first book and all my interim books and all my other experiences kind of led me to this place. And I started looking at the science and, every time you make a wish, you engage over a dozen sciences. And people don't realize that. I didn't realize it. I mean, for me, it was like this game of scientific whack-a-mole because science would pop up all over. More I researched, more I was like, wait a minute, there is anthropology, because wishing rituals, especially collective wishing rituals, which is the thing when you mentioned the cosmic wish experiment and the things that we can do together, right? Because we're worried about what can we do to elevate the energy. Well, we can elevate the energy by having a collective wish that we were all doing at the same time with a ritual, with the right energy. And so that just led me. So there's anthropology, and then preferably there is a ritual. So it's something that you're like, I don't know if it's 11:11 on the clock. I had somebody wanting to do a wish circle based on every time you see a mirror, you make the wish. Somebody else is wants to do a wish circle about helping animals. So that every time they see or hear an animal, they'll make the wish. But it's something that you can be reminding yourself and reminding the universe, hey, I really want this. And the one of the principles I put in there is what I call the 3 Ps, that the wish needs to be peaceful, positive, and purposeful.
I'm a metaphysical white Wiccan because I only work in love, 100% love, because that's obviously the most powerful, energy in the universe. And so like you, my simple principles are harm no one, and it's all about do unto others, right? And
yeah.
If you're not going to do it to yourself, don't do it to anyone else. Everything is love or nothing, right, Nick?
Right. So love is the highest frequency. Love and gratitude are the highest frequencies. And I want to talk about a couple of things. You were talking about neuroplasticity, and we know in science, neurons that fire together wire together.
That's right.
And
that's the collective thing. And I think we've lost this. I don't think we have that in this world like we need to. And so even if it's something simple that we're all wishing together, I mean, if it's love, if it's just love, and the idea of the 3 Ps are that they're kind of twofold. One is that as you're making the wish, you're in a state of peaceful, right? So that you're not in an anxiety state. You come to a peaceful place. That you're also making it from a positive mindset, and that you're also making a purposeful wish. And then there's the other aspect of the wish itself is peaceful, positive, and purposeful. And in my children's book, I think you'll like these examples that I put in there. But I have for peaceful, there's a girl getting ready to take a test and she's all nervous. And she's like, I wish I wouldn't fail this test. And then they add the science to it. They add the neuroscience. They add the polyvagal system, if you know all of that stuff, right? The add that where are you energetically on that? And so then all of a sudden she says, I wish to be peaceful and take this test, so that she's gonna. And then the science of being peaceful while you're taking the test increases your creativity, increases your ability to access those information. I mean, like it fulfills itself just as being peaceful, right? The positive one is maybe my favorite, but there's a kind of a preteen girl and her little sister, and her little sister's like trying to get her attention. And the preteen girl's got all these books on her desk, and she's like, and the little sister's trying to get her attention. She's like, I wish my little sister would leave me alone. I'm too busy. And then add the science to it to make it positive, because if you're wishing against, that's not going to take you forward. And so many times people's wishes are, even if it's a protest, yeah, you might get a lot of people at that protest, but where is that taking you? Wishing against doesn't move you forward. But like one of the things I like to say is, Joan of Arc had a vision, Gandhi had a mantra, Martin Luther King had a dream. I mean, what if today it's a wish backed by science, right?
That's a really good example of that, because I get asked a lot in my practice too, how I carry out spells, which are really just peaceful, loving wishes for people and myself, right? So I will say when someone will come to me and say, I hate my boss. I want her gone. I can't stand her. I don't want to quit my job, but she's the problem. So can I put a curse on her? No. You put a blessing on her. So what you do is if you really want her to be a happier, more productive boss, then you need to put out a blessing to the universe to say, please bless this woman with a better opportunity that will make her happy at her next position, so that she benefits first by, if she needs to move if that's what her fate is, if she needs to move into a better position that will make her happier, then she goes and does that. And if she leaves and she's happier, well, then you're happier and someone else can move in, or perhaps you get promoted to the boss. But the point is, that is how you do spell work. You do spell work through blessings, not through cursings.
That's beautiful.
So that's very similar to what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And so you're wishing, and she's probably unhappy.
Yes.
Right. Exactly. Right. If she wouldn't be making everybody's life difficult. So let's make her happy, but maybe somewhere else.
That's right.
And the person who asked the question may be the unhappy person in their life. And maybe that's why they were so negative. And that's a whole other story.
And that's a whole other story. Then it's wishing, because the after picture that I have with this preteen girl and her little sister is, I wish I had more time for my sister. And then she's going to find, her brain is going to, the reticular activating system of the brain is going to find the solution to that problem when you say it like that, right? It's like, oh, I want more time. I'm going to find more time. And the neuroplasticity means you need to repeat the wish, right? It is, you just want to remind your brain, and then the more you do, it becomes so natural that that's just what you do. And even if it's just love, or even if all you're doing is wishing to be peaceful, positive, and purposeful, it becomes self-fulfilling.
Right.
So
I would tell
a big
people,
aspect of it. Yeah.
I'm a big Post-it note person, probably because I was a classroom teacher for 20 years.
Yeah.
I put Post-it notes, and you can just put that peaceful, positive, and what's the third one? Purposeful, peaceful, positive, purposeful. Just put a Post-it note up on your kitchen, on your fridge, on your coffee pot, on your mirror in the bathroom, just to remind yourself. All my mantras and positive affirmations for manifesting, I have Post-it notes.
Yeah.
So I can repeat them and remind myself, okay, the world may be crazy out there, but in here, I don't have to be all negative.
That's right. And so for your other mantras or wishes, you can also make sure when you're looking at that, this is a reminder to become peaceful, positive, and purposeful. So you're monitoring your own energy, and you're getting to that frequency, right, by just monitoring your energy as you do it. And then I'll just finish up the children's book, as the third example is a little boy, and he's standing in front of a mirror, and he's got a towel around his neck, and he says, I wish to be a superhero. And he's looking at his reflection. And then, but that's not very purposeful. So when they add the science of purposeful, which is the mirror neurons, when you're starting to connect with other people are starting to, because they're supporting you. And then in the second picture is the mirror is all the people there that he's going to help, as well as the people are there to support him in that mission. And so all of a sudden you're multiplying, exponentially all that support you get by making it purposeful. So that's what I thought was really fun, is that I think we could all have had this conversation before I looked at the science and gone, we all get it, right?
Right.
But when you start adding the science to it, those people who might not get it are going to go, well, I do understand neuroplasticity. I mean, there are studies. And in fact, I quote over 70 different scientists in my book. And I have 400 and something research studies connected to it. I mean, it's like so researched.
Right.
So the super skeptics are like, okay, you want to read those 400? And if somebody comes back to me and says, because I'm not a scientist, right? I'm a storyteller. I just got interested in science. And somebody says, I got something else, or you're not looking at it right. I'm like, please tell me. I want to know. Like, I'm not rigid in how this gets communicated. I want to learn, and I want to keep letting it grow and evolve.
And that's what real scientists are supposed to say. I want to know more information. Not, there's cynical skeptics, which are not real
That's
scientists.
different. Yeah, cynics are different than skeptics, right? Yeah, you're right.
And then there are true scientists who understand that we are very small and insignificant in this giant universe as humans. And we shouldn't be so egotistical to think that our little book we wrote or read is the end all be all of all the knowledge in the universe, right? Not just on our planet, but in the universe. And so they must understand that we need to be as open-minded and gather more information, because we've only had modern science for, 70, 80 years really, with like real equipment and things like that. So we need to step
and we're
back.
learning every day. There's a chapter in the book about the frontiers, right? Things like retrocausality, and I also have this phenomena I talk about called the blue balloon phenomena. And it's just something I kind of came up with. But basically, imagine you're driving home and you have this vision of a blue balloon on your driveway. Okay. Now, what are the ways to explain that? Well, one is you could have gotten a psychic message. There's going to be a blue balloon. Another is you manifested that blue balloon because you thought about the blue balloon, and that's what made the blue balloon there, right? Then there you get into wild stuff like retrocausality, and the blue balloon was there, but then you got a time warp kind of issue. You also have kind of the question of maybe your subconscious saw it, but you didn't see it. So maybe it's just something on that level. So it's fun to look at these things from all these different dimensions and try to figure out, well, what could explain it? And so then manifesting looks really different, right? Because it's like, how much are you co-creating, and how much of it is, was there, not there, as part of what, all of these kinds of things. So anyway, it's my weird little way my brain works, I guess.
I want to go back to the belief system in all of this.
Yeah.
You mentioned belief system earlier, and you were talking about people who heal from illnesses. And this applies to everything in our lives, right? Our belief system really impacts what's going to happen, right? Because of, free will. We can also get into that if you'd like. But
I love that topic. I loved your show on that. So I hope everybody watches that didn't get to see that, because that was really
there's a lot of, controversy about free will.
Well, I got my ideas. So yeah, whatever you want to do that, but go ahead.
So how do you think our belief systems, based on your research and your books and everything, how do you think someone's belief system, if their frequency is low and they're feeling very negative about a situation, versus somebody who's very positive and grateful and has a good outlook and belief system of everything's going to work out? Can you give some examples of how to navigate those scenarios in a belief system to make our lives better?
Yeah, it gets really interesting, and in some cases kind of complicated, right? One thing, as I set up in the beginning of the book, is the difference between a wish, a prayer, and a goal. Mm. So that to me is an important way to start. Like, and basically, a goal is something in your control. You can say, I'm going to do this. I'm planning for this vacation. I can say, I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to do whatever these things are. And things can happen, but generally you feel pretty much in control of making that happen. So that's what a goal is. And then a prayer is usually for something completely outside your control. There's nothing you can do. It's just out in the ether. So you have to release it to some other higher power, whatever that belief is. It can be infinite intelligence, if you want to use that language. It can be spirit or God or, Allah or whoever. The thing I love about the wishes is it's somewhere in that middle ground. And so, because there is a part of it that is connecting to what I call cosmic collaboration, when you're collaborating with whatever this outside force is. And if you're really into science and don't give a hoot about spirituality, You can use quantum physics language that really gets into some of that stuff, like what you're tapping into is outside, and the non-local information that's kind of over my head, but it's enough for me to go, yeah, there's a lot of explanations that are frontier, or that some are actually there, of the place in the brain that connects to somewhere outside of ourselves, whatever that is. And so if you want to go science, you can go there. And then, but wishing there's some of it in your control. And so the basic message I try to get across is that there's a difference between a wish and a cosmic wish. And a cosmic wish, the word cosmic, I think you'll love, is if you look at Merriam-Webster, it's broken into 3 parts. The first part is that it is the universe or universal. The second part is, and I know you know this from a science standpoint, so I don't have to tell you what it is, Nicole, but the second part is that it's metaphysical or spiritual. And the third part is that it's comprehensive. And so the idea of taking a wish and making a cosmic wish is when you add the science to it and you start understanding, if I repeat it, I'm activating neuroplasticity. If I tell others, especially the right others, then you've got the mirror neurons that fire, and then you've got the support system. So all the little sciencey things that add to it, more you add that, the more you can get your wish under your control and the more control you have. But you still have some kind of gap, right? This, I think I was telling you all earlier about the movie Hitch, and he talks about kissing and says, when you kiss somebody that you should go in 90%, but they have to come in the other 10%. So there's somewhere of that gap of where's that 10% going to have to come meet you. So that's what I love about wishing, is you can be super religious or super spiritual, or, maybe not a complete skeptic, because they just like to ruin the party, but you can certainly, or I shouldn't say cynic. Skeptic, though, bring it on. Like, I want to be challenged. Come and measure it. Come and help me score it. Mm-hmm. I've got a tracking system for the Cosmic Wish Experiment where people can track their wishes and how they felt and what energy they felt when they made their wish, all that kind of stuff. So bring it on as far as that goes. So I think I love the fact that it can bring everybody together with a common language, because we all wish. Everyone wishes all over the world all the time since the beginning of time. Like, it is something we have universal that's got a lot of power to it. So did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Great. Lovely.
Good.
I think the disconnect with a lot of people when they're learning to manifest or trust in their wishes or trust even in their decisions, which are technically wishes, but they're just more formal. I think when you say, I want to do this, I'm making a choice to try this, they don't even realize it's a wish or manifestation. They just think it's a decision and it must be made. And there has to be a choice at this crossroad, right? And then once that choice becomes verbal or fact in someone's mind, they have to then wait for the results, right? And so I think that a lot of the stuff too is like, well, how long am I supposed to wait? Am I supposed to, I need this now. I need this answer now. I need this money now. I need this job now. But there are many incidences, as we can look back in our lives, where there are a lot of instantaneous things happening, right? That you don't even know because you take them for granted, to pay attention to stuff that does happen really quickly. And it's your mind and your thoughts that put the gap between the final result and the conjuring of it, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that's where a lot of people just get tripped up, is like, well, I've been waiting to win the lottery for 20 years, or I've been waiting for my wife to stop hating me for the last 8 months, and it should have been squashed like 7 months ago, kind of thing. So I think that is where I think most humans, like I said, with our egos, we get tripped up because we want everything now. When you go to a restaurant and you sit down and you have dinner and you take a menu and you go through it, you order something. You don't expect the order to show up, your plate to show up within 3 minutes, 5 minutes even. I think it's fair to wait anywhere between 20 and 40 minutes for your meal while they prepare it and bring it out. And we don't even think twice about waiting for our meal, but it's like we think of this big stuff that we want, and we're like, now. Everything is impatient. We all have ADHD. We all have a short attention spans. We all just want everything like, yesterday. So do you have some good tips on when you're sure about what you're manifesting and you're feeling it, the vibe, you're talking about it, you're thinking about it, you're writing about it. And then how do we be patient about it?
Yeah, well, I do. I have a whole chapter on what I call the 4 responses, right? And there's always an answer. One thing I wanted to say about like some of the things that you were saying before I get into the 4 responses, but is, the idea of the word, you can say it's a goal, but when you add it as a wish, feel the difference of the energy. Like just the word wish is like this mantra, this release, this okay. We all have kind of fun childhood memories of making a wish on a birthday cake or whatever it is, so adding the whole concept of a wish to it makes it more fun too. And there's a whole bunch of references in terms of the science of fun and how making it fun is so important. I'm going to divert and come back to the 4 responses if you don't mind, just to give an example, especially since you had your puppy, but is that there's, I talk about the 3 selves, right? Whether you want to call it conscious, subconscious, superconscious, or mind, body, spirit. Because that blew my mind on my first book, is like, oh, the subconscious is the body. Now all of a sudden everything got clear, right? But when you're talking about fun, for example, because one of the 5 reasons why bad things happen is subconscious sabotage.
Right.
And your body is your subconscious. So your body is going to give you all kinds of stuff that's going to get in your way and get you wonky. And whether that's to force you down another path or because it's fighting you on whatever you want, right? I had a friend of mine who was going to work all labor. She was a workaholic and she was going to work all Labor Day weekend one time. And she goes to a Thai restaurant to get some takeout food, walks out of the restaurant, trips on the curb, and she's in bed all weekend. Her body was going, F you, I'm not working. I'm going to make it so you can't work. Right. And when you talk about fun, imagine walking I won't say walking your dog, but maybe you see somebody else walking their dog because you probably do it right. But when somebody else is walking their dog and the dog runs off, what do they usually do? They usually yell at the dog or chase the dog. Right. But what works better is going, hey, it's fun over here. And the dog's going to go, yay, I'll go over there. Right. So where is it fun? That's where the energy is going to flow. And that's when your body is going to get totally aligned. If you're like, we're going to make this wish fun, and I hope my wife gets along with me. I don't know let's make it fun. Like, I wish to have more fun with my wife is a much better wish that you can start thinking of all the ways you can do that. Right. So just an energy thing. So that's why whole idea of wishing, I think, is just also adding a lot of fun, and the way your body reacts to it, and the science of fun is fun. But back to your question, yeah, there is a chapter on the 4 responses, and the 4 responses are yes, no, wait, or something better, right? And we get really tripped up sometimes because that's the beauty of the reverse optimism, is sometimes when we get no, it might be the best thing that ever happened. Like we go and we all know that Garth Brooks song, Thank God for Unanswered Prayers, or these things that we look back and go, oh, if that had happened, I'm so glad that didn't happen. Right. And then we also, so if you wish and you get a yes, it's not always necessarily best either, right? You can go, okay, maybe you're wishing for something that's not so really so positive or so good, or maybe, you could, if you had more time, not to make it personal, but you could have wished for your mother not to have left, but you saw the positive and you're like, okay, this is happening for a reason. I'm not questioning it. I'm not doubting it. And now you can look forward to the change in the next direction and feel confident in that. Right. So, and then the wait, I look at wait as 2 factors. One is, are you ready? And what are the things that have to make you ready for that thing? Right. And the other angle is the world ready? Right. So maybe I could have been big, successful first book, but maybe the world wasn't ready for that. Maybe it's more ready for that now. Or the wishing, I needed to add the wishing to it because bad things is kind of a drag, but wishing is a happy thing to talk about. So sometimes there's a divine timing, like this is when for that to happen. So, and then something better, I think we all know what happens sometimes when that happens. And we need to make sure that we're open to what could be better.
Yes.
because we're wishing for this, but there could be something you say, oh, I really want this man to fall in love with me. No, maybe what you want is this picture of what this person can offer you. And it could be any man as long as they're offering you those things, right? Like Nicole's like, oh yeah, I know that feeling. Yep.
Listen, I get that question a million times on my live streams, and I tell everybody the same thing. We don't have time to go into it now, but stop wishing for a man to fall in love with you. Take care of your own self. That's my answer to that. But I digress. I want to talk about wishing versus manifesting, and I want to tell you what I tell people, and then I want your opinion.
Okay.
So there's this story Greg Braden tells. I'm not sure if you're aware of who Greg.
Yeah, okay. I quote him in my book too.
Yeah, I figured you knew who he was. So he tells a story about being with a First Nation gentleman, and they need rain, and they go do this rain ceremony. And then it rains and rains and rains and blah, blah, blah. And he asked him how he did it, he asked the First Nation gentleman how he did it. And he said, I saw my feet in the mud. I saw the crops growing. I saw it as if it had already happened. And so based on that story, I tell people to make I am statements. I am a successful blah, 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 blah. I am a homeowner. I am a whatever it is. And to set your intention, do the work, and allow yourself to receive. So that's what I tell people to do. Now, is that different? That's how I tell them to manifest things. That's very basic. That's just an outline.
Yeah.
Is that, in your opinion, different than wishing? Or are we talking about the same thing?
I think we're talking about the same thing from a little bit different perspective.
Okay.
And I would say that and I know you said there's a lot more to it than what you're saying, right? And of course there's more to it in the wishing thing. There's when you look at the science from some of that, right, is you have to absolutely be able to see, I see myself in this place, right? Because you have to train your brain to be ready to receive it at that level, right?
Correct.
So you're teaching yourself, okay, I can see myself with the feet in the mud. I better get some galoshes because I got to be ready, right?
Right.
So there is that same element. And then I'm just saying there's scientific explanations to what you're talking about, as well as scientific actions you can take to enhance what you're talking about, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So the only other difference is a little bit of semantics as far as a wish versus manifesting. And I feel like a wish has a lighter air to it. And it's easier to kind of repeat and not feel like you're forcing yourself into something, because you do have to be open to something better, or you have to be open, like you said, Lady Shadowe, to waiting and timing and whatever's perfect for that. So I think that's I think there is, and you have to be open to the fact that okay, you can wish for this thing and you're clear, and then all of a sudden you realize maybe you don't wish for that anymore, and you have to give yourself some grace on that as well, right? Maybe you're shifting and maybe you wished for something at a certain time or wanted to manifest at a certain time, and then give yourself some grace to think, well, maybe I've changed that. Maybe it's something maybe I was looking down the wrong path and I need to go down the right one. So there's a chapter in the book about the problems and pitfalls that can happen when you kind of use some toxic positivity thrown in, or, oh, well, if you didn't wish it hard enough, or you didn't do all the things hard enough, then that's your fault and you're the problem. And it's like, no, it might not have been my destiny. Y'all talked about fate and free will before, right? It might have been something I didn't sign up for, or this might not be what's best for me. You can sit there and try to manifest that Ferrari in your front driveway. But guess what? Like, I love Anthony DeMello's work. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but, he would say, high probability you're not going to be happy the next day. Like, it's not going to give you the joy that you think it's going to give you with that Ferrari. Your neighbor's going to get a fancier one the next day. And then all of a sudden, why did you want that? And there's a whole part in the book too about wants versus needs. Like, what do you really want? Right. And I love to use, of course, I'm a storyteller, and Lady Shadowe, you're a storyteller. So I know, in stories that most movies that we love, especially the hero's journey type of stories, they start with a want, but they end with getting a need, right? Like in Star Wars, Luke wanted to go out on adventures with his friend, but he needed to find his purpose.
Yeah.
Right. And I like the movie Legally Blonde, right? She wanted to marry that guy.
Right.
And like, no, I don't want to, like she needed to stand on her own 2 feet and find out who she was. Right. So, and we love that in a movie. We just forget that for ourselves sometimes, and also with the we got, I think you were saying earlier, and I wanted to add to this, is like all the problems and obstacles. That's what makes us stronger, to be ready. I mean, if you follow the hero's journey, those obstacles are what make us ready. And so you're saying timing, maybe you do need a bunch of obstacles on the way because you're not quite strong enough to be really ready for that. So,
and
anyway,
we learn more
crazy stuff
and we learn more from our failures than our successes. Like you started out this podcast talking about so many failures that you had and so many challenges over and over. And you've said a couple of times, it's what led me to where I am.
Right.
All of those things led me, and Lady Shadowe and I have talked about that. And I think it's a beautiful story, right? Your life is a story based on everything you've experienced.
And it's for all of us, right? I mean, we all have that, I remember being in a meeting with somebody, she's like, people aren't going to listen to me as a coach because, I've got all these problems. I'm like, that's exactly why they're going to listen to you. Like, nobody respects a hero that everything's easy. You read a story, oh, it's easy. They get the girl that, no, we want to see them. I mean, as writers, right? We like to throw rocks at them. But I mean, like, we want to see them really be tested to see, are they really ready to be the hero? And the more their challenges that they go through, the better the hero they are. We need to look at our own life that way.
It's like turning to the Kardashians for advice on how to go from rags to riches when they just lived a life of riches to riches. They would never really know how to tell you that because they're just in this whole different world. And so we have to like pick and choose those battles, and like you said, understand and be grounded with being flexible. Things change, but also there is an inherent authentic you that wants what it wants. Like, I'm getting to Broadway one day. That's just an unchangeable fact. And my mind is there. I've already accepted that I will have a play on Broadway, in the near future. And my body is adjusting, like you said, to that reality already. Like, it's not this, oh my God, that could never happen. It's more like, nope, it's meant to be. It's already right here. So I think that's the difference in like how you feel something in your bones versus something that feels so far out that you can't even bring it in to the frequency as a reality. And that's exactly what you were saying, which is really great. But can I segue to that quickly because we don't have a lot of time? Please tell us where we can get your books, where we can buy your fiction, your nonfiction. Where can we shop for your awesome contributions to the world?
Well, thank you. Well, first, I'm the only Brownell Landrum in the world, so it's pretty easy to find me. I can't hide.
Awesome.
So I'm on all the social media. I've got a YouTube channel that I'm really developing more. So I hope people will start watching that and starting. I'm going to do a lot of fun activities to add to your wishes and that. And of course, brownelllandrum.com is my website for my author website. You can find my books on Amazon and most of the main places. So, and I love to hear from fans. I love reviews and I love to hear from fans. And I also have the Cosmic Wish Experiment. It's kind of like in this kind of infancy, but it is an opportunity for people to create wish circles where people start making the same wish. They'll collect and they'll invite people to make a wish together and they'll create a ritual. And there's tracking and it's all really fun. It's simple. It's free. It's my way of hopefully elevating the consciousness of the planet. So
beautiful. And what's your website?
brownelllandrum.com.
Perfect. And that's with 2 L's, everybody.
Yeah. 3 2 at the end of Brownell and 1. So there's 3 in the middle. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We will have all of that linked in the show notes.
Yes, we will.
As well. And I appreciate you taking the time to sit with us and give us all of this wonderful information, Brownell. It's been a wonderful conversation. I'm sure we could go in 100 other directions. I have other questions, but for sake of time, we'll have to do it another time.
That would be great. I'd love it.
I've
had a blast. So y'all are wonderful, and I appreciate you.
No, we've had a blast. Thank you so much for reaching out and finding our podcast. And that's another cool thing, is that like attracts like, and I love that we get to reach out to so many other fellow entrepreneurs and light workers and high frequency vibe humans. And just thank you for being you. We so appreciate that.
Thank you. And back at you.
Thank you, everybody. See you next week on the Soul Twin Stars podcast. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us this episode for the Soul Twin Stars podcast. Find us on our podcast Facebook page for Magical Mondays live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, where we will help you magically slay your weekdays, and for awesome giveaways. For more information about what other spiritual things Nick and I do and offer, visit peacefulnickthemedium.com. That's Nick with just a K. Or to connect with me, Lady Shadowe, soulsandspirits.com is the place to go. If you want to be a guest on one of our shows, we would absolutely love that. Contact us at soultwinstars@gmail.com. See you next Friday on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, Facebook, and on YouTube. Sending you all so many blessings. Thank you so much for joining us, and until next time, know that you are all cherished.